Hey y'all, so this lecture is going to be on the polygastric digestive system. You need to have completed the monogastric digestive system before you can do this one. If you if you do this lecture now, I'm going to be referencing stuff from the monogastric digestive system, and it's going to be confusing and it's just not cool for anyone, so follow directions. If you have not done the monogastric digestive system and you want to do the polygastric, exit out of this lecture, go back to the monogastric digestive system, do that one this week, you can do this one next week. All right, that being said, polygastric digestive system. The polygastric digestive system is very, very similar to the monogastric digestive system. The big difference is that stomach. Remember in that monogastric digestive system lesson, we talked about how mono means one, so monogastric digestive system has one stomach, where a polygastric digestive system has more than one stomach. Except that's super misleading because it actually only has one stomach. It's multiple compartments. A lot of times, especially younger kids, they'll just simplify it and they'll be like, a cow has four stomachs. A cow does not have four stomachs. A cow has four compartments within their stomach. So there are a couple types of polygastric digestive systems. I know of two. I'm not going to claim that they're the only two because there might be more. There are two that I know of. One is a ruminant digestive system. So cow is an example of a ruminant digestive system. And it's a four-compartment stomach. So examples are cows, goats, and giraffes. And we'll get back to giraffes because it is insane when you think about how how giraffes are ruminants. We'll come back to that though. There are also pseudoruminants. So pseudoruminants have a three-compartment stomach. Examples of this are llamas and hippos. I believe sloths are also pseudoruminants. We're really not going to worry too much about pseudoruminants because ruminants are way more common, but be aware that they exist. That's all I expect you to know about pseudoruminants. They exist. Three-compartment stomachs. So we're going to be focusing on a ruminant. And as I said before, a ruminant has a four-compartment stomach. And digestion starts really similar to that monogastric system. So we're going to use this cow as an example. Prehension, which if you don't remember what that is, it's getting food into their mouth. Cows use their lips as their form of prehension. And they swallow it. They really don't chew much that first time that it's in the mouth. Think of a cow grazing. It just picks up grass and it pretty well just swallows it. And it goes to the rumen. So the rumen is the first compartment. The rumen is the largest compartment. In a cow, it's around 25 gallons. The main purpose of the rumen is fermentation. So in the rumen, there is a bacteria that lives there, and it helps break down fiber. If you've already taken the nutrition module, you'll know that humans really can't break down fiber, but cows can. And that's because of these bacteria that live in their rumen. So cows will eat this large amount of grass or hay, and these bacteria will help start breaking it down. They also produce volatile fatty acids, which are absorbed by the papillae that line the rumen. So the papillae have a similar function as the villi in the small intestine. Really, the idea is that they increase surface area to help with that absorption. Not a ton of absorption happens in that rumen, except for those volatile fatty acids. Otherwise, most of what's being absorbed is, or most of what's happening is that fermentation and that starting of breaking down of those fibers. So, we're going to have a Miss Ekblad story time and talk a bit about a fistulated cow. So when I was in college, I had to take an animal science class, which makes sense. I mean, I'm teaching animal science right now. I had to take a few animal science classes. But my intro to animal science class Had a variety of labs that we'd just go out to the lab farm, and our professor would essentially bring in an animal and we'd talk about that animal. Now, for our digestion lab, he brought in what's called a fistulated cow. What that means is it has a hole in its rumen that it can be covered with like a piece of plastic, a plastic plug, and then you can pull out that plug. I lost my mouse. You can pull out that plug, and you can actually reach into that rumen. And then you can feel inside of her. It's not like you're gonna go to a farm and you're gonna see like half the herd is fistulated cows. Like, no, that's not a thing. It's really just used for educational purposes, and for academic study. Generally, you're not going to go to a farm with a fistulated cow. But this fistulated cow, we were able to stick our arms in, so we had to put on these big plastic gloves that went up to our shoulders, and we could stick our arms in, and we could feel the papillae. But when the professor first opened that hole, he started pulling out hay. Now, what surprised me about this is it wasn't what I would picture the contents of a stomach being. Because you think your stomach, it's filled with chewed up food and like grossness. Where this, he was pulling out hay, and it looked like it had just been sitting out in the fields or in their hayloft, fully intact hay. And I felt a little bad because I was like, wow, this cow went through so much work to eat all this hay, and our professor's just reaching in her rumen and pulling it out by the handfuls. But that was so that we could get our hands in and feel the side and stuff. It was a very interesting experience and probably the biggest thing that I still remember from college. But the reason why the professor was able to pull those full handfuls of hay out is because the cows haven't chewed them yet. Remember, they really just bite the grass and then they pretty well just swallow and it goes straight to the rumen. And so after that initial breakdown with those bacteria begins, the partially digested food will travel back up to the mouth for the animal to chew. But when it's in the rumen, it hasn't been really chewed yet. This is what happens when we say an animal is chewing their cud. But before we actually get to that, we've got to go to the second compartment. So first we've got the rumen. It's in the rumen. Digestion starts with bacteria that helps break down that fiber. So we're back here, rumen, and then it's going to go to a small compartment called the reticulum. The reticulum is also known as the hardware stomach. So sometimes when an animal is out grazing, they'll accidentally eat nails, screws, or pieces of metal. Also could eat rocks, but it's the metal that we're worried about. Because what'll happen is it'll eat these metal pieces and then it'll get stuck in that reticulum. And that can obviously cause problems. If you eat a nail, it's gonna cut into your digestive system. So to get these things out of the animal, they occasionally have to be fed magnets. And if you don't feed them magnets, these nails or screws can puncture the walls, or cause serious damage. So they sometimes have to be fed magnets. The reticulum is also known as the honeycomb stomach because the walls are shaped in those octagon honeycomb shapes. The purpose of the reticulum is it helps with that regurgitation so that that cow can chew her cud. So the reticulum pushes it back up the esophagus. The food back up the esophagus, not like the screws and stuff. Again, that would also be a problem. That's why they get caught there. But pushes it back up the esophagus so that the animal can chew their cud. Remember how I said giraffes are ruminants? So picture this, because this is where it gets insane, and like my mind is always blown by this. That means that the partially digested food has to go all the way up that giraffe's long neck. And this just amazes me, like totally astounded. I've been to zoos and I have sat and watched the giraffes for like 20 minutes trying to see them chew their cud because I just want to see it travel back up their throat. I can't imagine that it's all that great. But it is. It works. It works. Um, so yeah, goes back up the stomach, or not back up the stomach, back up the esophagus, and this is when they're chewing their cud. And what happens is it forms a bolus. And a bolus is a chewed up food mass, I guess, that is then swallowed. So, bloop, chews it up. Once it's all chewed and great, goes back down the esophagus. And instead of going to the rumen this time, it goes to that third compartment, which is the omasum. Water nutrients are absorbed here before traveling to the fourth compartment. So omasum, and then it goes to the abomasum. The abomasum is sometimes referred to as the true stomach because its function is similar to the stomach of a monogastric animal. So it does kind of the same thing as our stomach, the abomasum. Then it's really floop, out the small intestine, out the large intestine, out the rectum, out the anus. Again, really, after the abomasum, it's the same as a monogastric digestive system. Hence why I told you to do monogastric first. Wow, yeah, I think that pretty well sums up what I wanted you guys to do or learn about. Again, summary: eat, swallow, rumen, reticulum, back up the esophagus, back down, or chew, back down the esophagus, omasum, abomasum, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. Now there are 2 quizzes on Schoology. One's a practice, there's only one quiz on Schoology for this one. There's a practice. LOL. No, I don't have a one on Schoology for this. Sorry, I'm double checking my notes. What you're going to do now is you're going to practice labeling the ruminant digestive system, and instead of a quiz on Schoology, I want you to draw a diagram that shows the digestive process of a ruminant animal. Include what happens in the rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum, and anything in between. Include at least 2 facts about each compartment, and define bolus, mastication, and prehension. So, do those things, submit to Schoology, and that is all you gotta do. Peace out, Girl Scout.